Hello, welcome to Global Thought, New Thought, spreading the word through interviews of amazing people. And our guest today for uh, a delight to my heart is Reverend Dr. Martha Creek. I mean, you're not going to believe how wonderful she is. She's the very first person I ever met at Anton. She is Everybody in New Thought knows Martha Creek. I mean, everybody knows who she is. Everybody smiles when they hear her name. She is, she's the epitome of New Thought. She trains people. She trains. All right, little bio here. She is ordained in religious science and divine science. She has served as the Great Lakes Unity Consultant and is a member of the Unity Theological Institute faculty. She attended Emerson Theological Seminary for a master's and a doctorate, the Byron Katie School for the Work, and Hoffman Institute. She's a healthy congregations facilitator and trainer. She is an amazing person. I'm so thrilled you said yes. I can hardly stand myself.
Well, I love, honey. I think we ought to probably specify what Anton is, Affiliated New Thought Network. If Martha Creek had such a profound effect on you when you first met her there, then everybody ought to run out there to that conference coming up next year in October 2 to 6. So you can get a big hug from Martha Creek. And it's a delight, Sharri, what you're doing in the world and what New Thought Media is doing to make this possible, to get empowered teachings to the whole of the world, which is what my mission in life is, to serve those who are serving and to get empowered teachings to the whole of the world. So I thought this is a fulfillment of my life's mission to be asked by you to come on to this today. So miracle makers making miracles. Amen.
There we go. Okay, so we're going to back up a little bit. I'm going to ask you some sort of setup questions like, what brought you into ministry? How did you end up doing this?
Well, I've known that I was a minister since my earliest memories. I estimate I was about 3 years old, and I said out loud, what are you going to be when you grow up? And the answer was a minister. And in my family, that was funny because it sounded like I was a little comedian making jokes. And then they realized, that she's not kidding. So then it got very, very scary because there's no such thing as women ministers. So then it looked like I wasn't a comedian, that I had some insanity running. So I've known from my earliest memories, honey, that I was on this earth as a minister. I believe that minister is a verb, not a noun. And I also was clear, though, that my calling included being a professional minister, fulfilling a calling. And I established that for myself as a young girl, too, that when I turned 40 years old, and 40 being a very significant number to me and metaphysically, that at age 40, I would stop whatever I was doing, whatever career I was in, whatever achievements I had put forth or had been able to create or co-create or be blessed to have. I would stop it all and go formally into ministry at age 40 and to serve the rest of my days on this earth in that profession. So here we are that many years later.
And now you're training ministers.
Well, when you said that, I laughed out loud in the introduction, and he's like, I can't train anything or anybody, but I provide trainings, and ministers change themselves and change their thinking and start to get self-differentiated and take responsibility for what is theirs and drop believing they're responsible for things they're not. So it looks like they're being trained, but it's absolutely the individuals doing it, not Martha Creek.
Oh, but you know what it is, Martha Creek. It's you being Martha Creek that's making the difference.
Well,
nobody could be around you and not change. Nobody could be around you and not begin to see more of who they are and be more of who they are. You're just an amazement to my heart. So we know that you are one of my highest class of angels is people who support ministers. And that's your chosen field is supporting those of us who are trying to support the rest of the world. So how do you find people? How do people find you? How does a training happen? How do you decide who you're going to train and what their training is going to be about?
Well, I go where I'm invited. But the question is a powerful one, Sharri, because it goes back for decades now of where, and I get this question pretty regularly because I went into places that other people wouldn't go into. So I got called when they didn't know who to call. And then I had colleagues that said, send Martha, like send Martha. And oh, you need Martha. So it became really a business and a livelihood built out of referrals and somebody witnessing me and saying, this is valuable. And I know so and so could be benefited by this. So I was on assignment early on in my career out of judicatory kind of assignments when people got into serious allegations of competencies or ethics or things like that. I was sent out to navigate some of that structured dialogue, community meetings, trainings, and things to get people, the ministers and the ministries back on some solid ground for themselves, for them to navigate whatever's going on. I also determined that 20 some odd years ago, now 24 years ago, that I'm not going to work as a 911 responder. So if it's like, if you're not going to go to the dentist till your teeth start falling out, that's on you. So I'm not going to be a 911 responder and go out and try to, in the metaphor of the dentist, I can't put your teeth back in. So I'm going to work with people that understand this is critical work. It's the nature of the business. It's the nature of humans. And they're going to be much more proactive about this. So I established trainings throughout regions and regionally. I did it online. I found host ministries that would get me in there and bring in, 6 or 8 ministries at a time to get some training on a weekend, and then made myself available to the ministries throughout the year. And then since the last 2 years and the COVID shutdowns, I have worked nearly every single week with ministers, often every day with ministers. And I work almost every week with leaderships, boards or key lay leaders and stakeholders in ministries virtually through Zoom or some other technology similar to what we're using here today. So that's made it possible for me to reach, and I prayed for this, that I could serve more ministries than I could ever physically reach, so that I would find a way to serve ministries without having to be in their physical presence. And it has unfolded exactly like that. So it's really broadened my reach, and I will go where I'm invited. I don't have a target for it. I don't say I am only into this vein or this flavor or that flavor. And primarily 95% of the organizations I work with are New Thought communities.
And now I did not realize you also worked with the leadership, the ministry leaderships, as well as the ministers themselves. That's an amazing balancing act. I'm really impressed.
It is a great deal of balance. And it also, though, speaks to the care of the ministry itself. It's both and. It's not one or the other.
Oh, that's marvelous.
For ministers to strengthen their own capacities and their own emotional care and spiritual self-care is absolutely vital and critical. And the leaders, though, and how they're appointing leaders and recruiting leaders and caring for their leaders is essential and vital for the life and the thriving nature of the ministries.
So this is probably not a question that has a complete answer, because I think that each situation you address is going to be unique. But is there like an average amount of time you spend with a training for a ministry or a training for a group of ministries?
There's not. It's every bit of it is customized. Because just last month I worked with a ministry with just 4 sessions of 2 hours to look at a rough patch they had hit and some disagreements and some things that have happened. So it had a beginning and an end. And going into it, we didn't know if it was going to be 2 or 4 or 6 sessions, but we knew that it wouldn't take years for this. other ministries, and it could be just before this call, I was in facilitating a conversation between just two people that needed somebody, a witness and a good listener, and some demonstrated listening to ease some of what they were going through, that they referred to, just as I hung up the call, as a speed bump. We kind of hit a speed bump here.
Good.
And that's very uplifting to hear it as that, when we've got these big emotional human parts of us running when we get offended and affronted and hurt and in power plays and all sorts of things. And there's ministries I'm still working with that I've been working with for 15 years that would look more like an annual visit, or a board training, an annual board training. When their leadership turns over, they add people to the team. Or when they're in a transition phase, if the minister is going to change their part-time status, go to part-time, for example, or retire, or go into succession planning. So it's every bit customized based on the life of the minister and the ministry and what's going on in there. And all of it has historical consideration, organizational considerations, as well as emotional and relational dynamics.
So what's your very most favorite part?
Ahas, people taking responsibility for themselves, people questioning what they believe in their own convictions, and seeing that even what I claim to believe is not often what I believe. And that just because I can tout a platitude or 12, if I've not embodied that and I'm not living from that it would hold no power. I love when people wake up to the difference, the very nuanced and subtle difference of power versus force. I love watching people be able to speak honestly with kindness and getting more in line with their human heartedness. I'm very inspired that people can be in the messy middle of organizational unfolding and ministry unfolding and the nature of the human being, and their grit and resilience to stay the course amazes me and absolutely uplifts me on a daily basis. It's one of my favorite things about humanity, not just what I do as a profession, but the resilience of human beings all, and inspire me minute to minute.
Well, I have a couple of questions I ask every single guest. And usually I wait till the end, but I'm going to ask you now because I think they're going to weave into what you're doing. So here's the first one. How does what you're doing, your ministry, support and increase world peace?
Well, I walked around a lunch table into a room with people that didn't know I was in the room, and heard them say, Martha Creek changed my life. Martha Creek changed my life. Martha Creek saved my marriage. Martha Creek has helped my whole family. So these are words about the work that comes through me, and whatever gifts I have that I'm not only exploring, but expanding very clearly and very intentionally and with a great deal of heart. So I sincerely believe that everything I'm doing is for my own soul's evolution. And therefore, it's for the evolution of the soul of humanity. So any moment that I can make even any moment that I have access to choice, and any moment I can make a different choice, I've contributed to peace. And everybody around me has contributed to peace. The more we make that choice and the more we stay the course of this work and practice what we're preaching and teaching, and continue to question what is true for us and what isn't, and what we're actually convicted in, and then to live out of that. So I believe that my only contribution to world peace or global peace is to work here at the projector and To the degree that I can do that, I rest in knowing that whether I ever see it or not, I have made a contribution to global peace. So, as the saying goes, I may never sit under the shade of the trees I'm planting, and I am planting anyway.
Well, you have just demonstrated why I think you're so marvelous. Because in the midst of explaining that you contribute to world peace one heart at a time, you have stated my second question, which is, how does your ministry contribute to conscious evolution?
Well, and and it's like let me count the ways. By one more gathering at a time, one more prayer at a time, one more written assignment at a time, one more release at a time, one more forgiveness at a time, one more taking responsibility for my part of any ill will or frustrations or hurt feelings, and not taking responsibility for the other side.
So, what's the hardest part of what you do for you? What's the most difficult part for you?
Believing that I can pry the petals of a flower open to get it to bloom. And that if I just right, or pray just right, or hold my mouth just right, as my mama would say, I'm going to catch it. And I surrender daily to the bloom unfolds on its own timing, not on Martha Creek's timing. And I sincerely want to ease suffering. And it's hard to accept that suffering is a part of our human learning processes, of my human learning processes and human learning processes, and to allow people to have their suffering, and not only to have their suffering, Sharri, but to keep their suffering. As much as I want to ease it and to eliminate and reduce suffering, accepting my powerlessness in that, in certain situations and with certain styles and with certain circumstances, that I have to accept that it's their suffering and it's theirs to have and theirs to keep, if that is to be their path.
Well, I'm just, blown away. I am. I'm just blown away. You haven't said anything I didn't already know about you, Martha, but somehow when you say it out loud, it gets so real. What is your vision for the future of your ministry? If it could be anything, it can be. I know it can, but just for a moment, setting aside all of our human, but what's the perfect future for your ministry?
I've thought about this and actually done visioning around it, and individually and in groups. And I would sum it up as saying that people are healed in my presence. That there is a healing, emotional, spiritual, psychological, physical healing in my presence. That's my highest hope for the ministry of Martha Creek. More practically, I'm intent on getting empowered teachings to the whole of the planet. So that's why I would write a newsletter and send it out every month at no charge. And I resisted that. I was clearly guided and directed to do it, and I resisted it. I'm not doing it. I'm not writing a newsletter. I delete 25 a day out of my emails. I'm not doing it, and it would not leave me to save my life. So I said, then I will do it 90 days to prove that it's irrelevant. I will then quit it and go back to what I know to do. And it went from 100 to 300 to 1,000 to 2,000 over the years. And it's still got an open rate of about 35%. And I still threaten to quit writing that little newsletter.
Don't you dare.
I'll get an email or a phone call that says, Just so you know, your name is written on our family calendar for the first day of every month because we look so forward to getting that newsletter. Or an email that's from people I have never met in another country that said, just so you know, your newsletters are teachings for our family. And we print them off and bring them to our table. And we have lessons from these newsletters that you write. So that ministry is expanding in that way. It expanded by then somebody saying, Martha, these newsletters are so good. I put them in a book, put them in a book, put them in a book. And I finally one day said, you put them in a book. I'm busy. And by golly, she put them in a book. So she gathered them up, picked out her favorite ones, sent them to me in a Word document. I sent it to somebody that knows what they're doing. And now there's a book called Martha's Pearls. And it has sold, and it's just it's a compilation of newsletters that were already written. So I didn't have to write a book. And it's already sold in 12 or 15 countries via Amazon.
So Amazon is where we go to get Martha's Pearls.
Absolutely. Or right on Martha Creek's website. So it is expanding in ways I don't know. Somebody told me today that they saw a plaque that somebody had made a contribution in my name anonymously. And it's like, I have no idea what effect this is having. I don't make it my business. I do my part. I do what I said I would do. I generally do what I'm guided to do after some wrestling and resistance, and then giving up, giving in again, surrendering again, and trust the absolute process that all the power and presence of an infinite eternal life is at work in me and in all that I put forth. And it will then find its way into people's hearts and lives and their families and their marriages and relationships, their ministries or organizations on the winds of whatever the mystery of life is. And I'm only responsible for doing my part of that.
There you go. Okay, so how busy is your calendar? How hard is it to get you onto somebody's schedule?
The schedule is, I'd say 80% full, and I say there's always time. So there's always plenty of time, and it's usually a simple request. Sometimes it may be waiting a few weeks. Anymore. It used to be the calendar was booked 2 years out.
Oh,
and that's all different now since the shutdown and moving so much of it to the on Zoom technologies and StreamYard and things. So there's availability as far as I'm concerned.
And I have the feeling that even though you're not a 911 responder, I was so tickled when you said that, because I was getting ready to say that very thing, that's what it sounded like. Even though you're not a 911 responder, I suspect there is probably such a breadth and depth in your experience, in your capabilities, that, like God, there's nothing that's too big or too little to ask you about.
I am open to being asked about anything. And I kind of grin too, Sharri, as I said it, because I'm whatever's right after the 911 responder. So go and get your broken leg set and get a cast on it, then call Martha Creek and go and get your
So you're the floor nurse. You're not the ER nurse. You're the floor nurse. I love it.
The one that's gonna, whatever happens to this body and to the emotional body, I'm gonna be able to put a little soothing balm on it one way or the other. And I'll do it by questioning and facilitating somebody's own wisdom, not the wisdom of Martha Creek, but the gift I have of asking questions and then waiting for people to access their own wisdom, to find another way to be with whatever circumstance they're in. And it's literal. I think that's in the bio somewhere. And I've heard it this week more than I recall ever hearing it in my life, that I am about a new way of being. And it's one thing to say that, it's another thing entirely to live from that.
Oh,
So
you just gave me the best lead in, because I want to say to you, everything you're saying makes perfect sense. Everything you're saying just lifts my heart up. But what I want to do is give people an experience of what that's like. So could you give us an example or tell us a story about some situation, without any confidentiality being breached, so that we can have a little taste of how you're working?
just last night, I did a class for a closed group of people that commit to work with me throughout the year for 8 or 9 months consecutively. It's called Immersion. And people can reach out to me via email if they want information about that. The next session will open in September next year in 2023, in September or August of 2023. And a lady texted and said, I want you to know that I spaced out the call. I missed the class. And I want you to know that it's the first time in my life that I didn't have guilt and shame over something like that. And I was struck by it, she said, of how, and she said, I had this slight little tinge in my stomach, and then a relaxing around it. So I've missed a class, or I've missed something different than I've ever been in my whole life. And that's a complete reframe with this fear of missing something, which is psychologically documented and proven, this fear of missing out, this fear of doing something wrong, this fear of failure. And this woman was depicting that she was with that same situation, a common, normal, routine situation of having spaced out something, and she didn't mind. She wasn't under a deep effect of guilt or shame or worry or panic. I believe the world has changed in situations like that. And I witness them. I have them myself, and I witness them throughout the day, every single day. It could be one of the ministers reported on the call, the group ministers group call this morning, that she said her son said to her, Mom, I'm noticing a pattern in you. Would you want to check that out? And she didn't respond with her high righteous, who are you to be advising me about my patterns? She responded with, that's one of the kindest, honest things anybody's ever said to me. Yes, I want to check that pattern out.
Wow.
So instead of how dare you, the response is, of course, or maybe I'll take a look at that. It's living from how dare you to thank you.
Martha, it sounds to me like what you're doing is teaching people how to take their armor off and
Well,
put it away.
I think the armor comes off when we realize where our true power is and what true empowerment is. And we've been encouraged along these lines from almost every faith tradition that says that your power lies in your defenselessness. The true power lies in your defenselessness. So it's an openness, and what we say, and through New Thought and Emerson and our teachings, Emerson Institute and affiliated New Thought Network and others, that this is about staying open at the top, open-minded. And people say, oh, I want an open heart like that. An open heart. It's like open heart, open mind.
Yep.
Open mind, open heart. And then the armor and this notion that we believe that we've got to protect ourselves from something or somebody or some tone or some judgment won't have the same effect on us.
Wow. So, and something else I think I heard you say was that when you come into a situation, when you're invited into some situation to help find a resolution, you go in with the outlook that the solution is already there and all you're going to do is help them find it, help them discover it on their own.
Absolutely. And I believe that's one of my gifts. And if there's superpower, that's one of them. And I'm not always clean in it. I still slip off into my own humanness of giving advice and trying to direct and taking responsibility for what is not mine. I just don't let it go as far. So stress will arise immediately when I leave my lane, when I get into somebody's business besides my own. So I absolutely intend, and act as I can on staying in the truest role that is mine, personally, spiritually, and professionally, which is that of a facilitator. So I am there to ask questions and to hold space for people to find answers to the questions that are their answers, not something they read in a book's answers or some platitude answer or Martha Creek's answers for darn sure, but what is your honest, true answer from within you? And the wisdom is at the table. The wisdom is in the group. The wisdom is in the spouses. The wisdom is in the family. The wisdom is here now. And I'm here to do whatever the art of right questioning I can to get them in touch with the accurate, true, or truer answers.
And I love word origins. And you just used the most wonderful word, facilitator. You don't manage, you don't organize, you facilitate. And it's from the Latin and it means to make easy. You make it easy for them to let go of whatever it is they've been hanging on to so hard they can't see past it, and then see past it. I want to be you when I grow up.
Be careful. Well, you'll be the best you can be, honey, and I'll be the best
for that in a heartbeat.
That is so inspiring to even hear that today, that my role then, part of my mission, is to make whatever I'm involved in easier. Like easier, a conversation easier, a disagreement easier, irritation easier, a strategizing session easier. And I certainly can recommit myself right now in this moment and in your presence, Sharri, and anybody that's listening or watching, to redevote myself to actually living that out, that I am here to make it easier and to make it easier for me and any other human being that I have any reach of. That is my sincere, heartfelt desire to facilitate, which is to make ease, to bring ease.
Well, I have one more question that I ask all of my guests. No, I have two, but this is the first one. And that is there anything that you would like to tell us about? Anything about your ministry, about your life, about your dreams that I haven't asked you about?
Well, thank you. I would encourage them to go to the website, get the newsletter, check it out to see if it's for them. If it's not for them, they can unsubscribe quickly, and to give it a fair test. So even if the first 2 or 3 months doesn't really resonate or they didn't get much from it, to give it a fair test, because there could be a little quote or a snippet or a gift or a piece of music or something that's in there. It doesn't cost a dime. So they're welcome to that. And then to send that out to anybody they're called to, so that my mission being getting empowered teachings to the whole of the world, that I can reach this many people. And then through Sharri and the New Thought Network and media networks, we can reach this many people. And then through all of those listeners, we reach and reach and reach. There's also a YouTube channel called Martha Creek, and it's got recorded sessions. It's got teachings, workshops on there, one specifically called Presence and Functioning, which takes us through this. Maybe I think what you were inquiring about early, Sharri, or pointing to the practical nature of this. How am I going to apply this? It's about an hour, and I take 25 points and talk 3 or 4 minutes on how I practically live this out in my life, or how I've witnessed other people doing it, so they can subscribe to the YouTube channel and then they'll be notified when something new goes up. So anything I'm recording for churches also goes up on that channel. So, and then again, share it out to the world if they find meaning and resonance in it, or even if they say, God, this chick's not for me, but my friend Betty might like this, or my friend Tom's in a rough spot. He may get some meaning out of this, even if it's not your cup of tea. Pass the cup of tea along to somebody else that may be suffering and may have suffered just enough.
Yeah.
Because it's not this taking responsibility for ourselves is not for everybody.
Well, I think it is for everybody. It's just not something everybody's willing to even consider.
Yeah, it's not the time yet.
Yeah.
It's not the time yet for some of us. Yeah.
Okay, and here's my last question. And I ask everybody this question, and I'm praying for the right answer. Will you come back?
Yes.
Yes, that's the right answer. That's the right answer.
Yes, and when and how. So I'm happy to do it, honey, and honored to be asked, and absolutely relax and knowing that this will be used in a power in greater ways than either you and I can imagine.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much. You just have made my whole week, not just my whole day, my whole week. And I will send you a list of dates that are open. We're anytime from May on next year is open. You can have any Tuesday you want. And for those of you who are watching, I want to let you know that the wonder just keeps rolling on, because next week we have Reverend Dr. Missy Higginbotham from Emerson Institute as our gift. So, and I said it on purpose. I know I was supposed to say guest, but let's face it, you guys are a gift. So please come and be with us again next week. Bye-bye.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.
Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing